I really miss the days where it was fun and cool to swap the letters in the title for numbers. I mean, those days haven't fully ended, and if the way that everyone calls that movie Fan4Stick is any indication, there's some serious mimetic potential for doing so. But this used to happen a whole heckin' lot, and I wanted to come back, man. Not many people have the cojones nowadays to unself-consciously swap an E for a 3, and I think that makes us a weaker, more boring species. So I just want to take a moment to revel in those brilliant idiots that came before. The clearest and purest example of this would be substituting the words 4 and 2 with the numbers 4 and 2. Starting with movies, because, you know, I make videos for the movie channel. By the way, did you know we have a gaming channel and a music channel?
Anyway, a lot of the movies that did this are 2000s kid shit like Pokemon Forever, but the phenomenon made its way into media of all ages and demographics.
For every Madagascar escape to Africa, there was a Too Fast, Too Furious, or a Leprechaun Back to the Hood. But games got more than a fair share in the trend, spanning decades with titles like Earthworm Jim, Menace to the Galaxy, and Ratchet & Clank All for One. Arcade games were all over this crap, giving us Too Spicy and the home release version of Outrun 2, Outrun Coast to Coast. One great one that struck me was Too Extreme, not just because of the overt 90s/noughties-ness of featuring both numbers for letters, but also a fetish for the letter X. No, it's because I tried to find out if there was a first game, just called Extreme presumably, but I couldn't find anything. There was a movie, a band, and plenty of extreme somethings, but no extreme. They were just too extreme to start at number 1 like all the other squares. There's also Ready to Rumble Boxing, which is fairly straightforward, but they definitely shot themselves in the foot when it did well enough to warrant a sequel. Disappointingly titled Ready to Rumble Boxing Round 2. Not Ready 3 Rumble Boxing. Not Too Ready to Rumble to Boxing 2. You might think I'm crazy now, but check back here at the end of the video and you'll find out just how much precedent there is for dumb shit like this. Bring It On In It to Win It was originally called Bring It On Forever, which may actually be a really smart move to change because they seem determined to make an infinite number of Bring It On films. There's 6 of them right now, and I've listed them here, but because they refuse to make it clear which number they are in the series, they could be any number of them, and the series will never end. I reckon the James Bond franchise would have died if they'd numbered each entry. You're more likely to go see Skyfall than you are to see James Bond 23. Entering double digits on a franchise is a pretty bad look. This one pretty much died out when we hit 2010, but there were a few legacy titles like Back 4 Blood in 2021, which was a spiritual successor to 2008's Left 4 Dead, so it made sense to adopt the series' convention. Slightly related to the 4 and 2 thing is putting the number of the entry in a series in the title. I'm talking things like Shadow Man, To Second Coming, and once again, the objective masterpiece Too Fast, Too Furious. These ones, I feel, represent a complete lack of fucks given by either the marketing department or the producers. They're almost always sequels to madly successful properties. Their success was assured, cheesy naming or not, so all they had to do was signify, hey, you know that thing you liked a few years ago? There's another one now. You may have noticed that there's a lot of crossover between the 2 instead of 2 and second entry in the series examples, because while your average producer or marketer might be able to resist the lure of doing it for one of these reasons, if the universe aligns to provide 2 justifications, say the second film in a series that has the word 2 in the title, humans feel a compelling urge to turn it into a number. I think Leprechaun Back to the Hood counts in this category as well, because while it's the 6th film in the series, it's the second Hood Leprechaun film. They made 2 Hood Leprechaun films. People just fucking love to do this with the 3rd entry in the series. There's not many movies I'm aware of that do this, though there is Turk-3-in. No, this one mostly belongs to games like Drive 3er and F3er.
Driver 3 is nothing more than a bit meh, and Fear 3 is a mishmash of action and horror that went about as well as Dead Space 3 in that regard.
Except Dead Space 3 didn't write its title like the 3 space, and so I could not give a bloody fuck about it. They also followed up Too Extreme thinking in for a penny, in for a pound, and called it Thruxtreme on the PS1. Honestly, I never played either of them. Pop your Thruxtreme hot takes in the comments. The Scream films decided to give it a go with Scriforum, but completely unrelated to the numbers in the title thing, they displayed their true cowardice by failing to call Scream 5 Scream 8 instead. Now that would have been a baller move, but into the missed opportunity zone you go. There's a really unique instance in Silent Hill Origins. Being a prequel, it has 0 instead of an O since it comes before 1. That's just neat, you know? They're aware of the trope and playing with it. It's neat. I'd love to include one sane in this praise as well, since it's the only instance of the first game in a series declaring to the heavens that it's the first game.
To their credit, they stuck their guns and released a sequel, Into Ain. Beautiful.
Here's a fun fact for you. Final Destination 5 was originally marketed as 5-0 Destination. And I don't know what to tell you. If your brain isn't doing what mine is right now, then you're probably too young for me to explain it. A slight spin-off to this section would be the phenomenon of putting an 8 in skate. This used to happen all the fucking time, and stems from the bygone era of tech speak that's no longer relevant with today's technology and phone plans. Street Skater, Tony Hawk's American Skateland, Skater Boy. Every one of them a precious slice of history that carries meaning. When I look at these titles, I think Nokia 3210s, Tony Blair, clip-on chains for your jeans. A simpler time. Shout out to the rapper Skate and the anime Skate the Infinity for carrying the torch into the 21st century. You're doing good work, citizens. Please continue. Sometimes the number is there in the title to reference something present in the story, or in the case of games, in the gameplay. For instance, Ratchet & Clank All for One is somewhere between the 8th and 11th game in the series, depending on what you count as a main game, and instead refers to the fact that it's a 4-player co-op game. And in a similar vein, The 3 Plan isn't the third in a series, it's a stealth game where you play as 3 thieves at the same time, flipping between them on the fly. That's about it. 2 Survive is a twin-stick top-down shooter game that usually has 2 characters on each level. The developer's also called 2 Bad Games, which is just begging me to make a mean-spirited joke, but you know what? The fuck do I know about making games? You go get 'em, Tony. Either way, the title is stupid, and I love it. Oh god, I have to read this one out loud. Spas 3 Invaders Extra Threem is a weird one. Why are only some of the E's turned into 3s? Did they start doing it in full, but get pushback because it looks completely ridiculous? Did people in the company fight for the second E, write business cases, deliver presentations, escalate for approval, pull strings? To be a fly on the wall in that office. A good number of titles have completely redundant numbers in them. Take 13 in Ghosts, for instance. They really want you to know how many ghosts there are in that film. By the way, can you guess how many there are? It's 12. There's 12 ghosts in the film. It's perfect. They especially didn't need to do this one because the original film just went with 13 ghosts, because that's how you write things. Some don't even make sense, like Sesevenin. I suppose if you spin a 7 about 110 degrees, it looks like a V, but why would you do that? I'm almost 100% certain that this one only exists to make people like me wonder why there's a 7 in there, and thus talk about the movie more. Which is just, I mean, you're 7. You're one of the best movies ever made. You don't need to do that. Have some self-confidence. Lucky Number Sesevevin tries to do the same thing, but at least they had the courtesy to flip it for you in the title. Of course, then the title becomes kinda stupid, and the movie ties itself into some fucking crazy knots to justify the pun that it just invented. It's been a while since I saw it, but I think it involves a horse? Like, whatever. A lot of people putting numbers in the title thought they were being a lot cleverer than they are. The Shining City on the Hill is, of course, Fanforstic, which completely reignited my love of the practice. Their mistake, or their success depending on how you look at it, was in making something that's largely pronounceable if you say the number, and thus memeable. But you've also got things like the movie, I'm just gonna say this one, Simone, in which a guy makes a robot AI to imitate an actress. Of course, in the 2000s, anything techie had to replace letters with numbers, a well-respected tradition in the earlier, later days of the internet. Of course, the landscape evolved since then, and we missed out on the opportunity to watch Westworld. Back when the 3DS came out, publishers would be putting 3D in the titles all the time to really dig into the USP. Some of these people turned back to the time-honored letter-replacing tradition, producing Mahjong, Cub 3D, or Crush 3D. I'm not aware of any movies that try to replace letters with 3D as opposed to just calling it movie title 3D, but do let me know in the comments if I missed any. All of the prior examples I've shown have at least some kind of justification for the numbers in the title, but there's a surprising amount of media out there with numbers in the title for absolutely no goddamn reason whatsoever. Video games are, again, notorious culprits for this, like Spliss 3. It's a standalone game, and as far as I remember, the number 3 doesn't hold any significance. It's just because a 3 looks like a backwards capital E. R3p14c1ng L3tt3r5 is a survival exploration game about the sole survivor of a space station trying to find out what happened and get home. It's basically Gravity, but more boring. The 1 in the title might have had something to do with the game director's departure from Microsoft over controversy surrounding the Xbox One's always online DRM policy, but honestly, my eyes started glazing over the more I read about it, and the guy seemed like a wanker, so into the bin he goes too. Motormorphorc's Off-Road Extreme was a weird one. I tried so hard to find out if there was any prior games, or anything about the game at all, since it's no longer being sold on Steam. I even went to the second page of Google search results. Who does that? But unless I've missed something, it's the only game in the series, and there's no significance with the number 4 in the game itself. A mystery. A beautiful, beautiful mystery. But movies still do this, featuring the absolute worst example of all in La Folia Cake 3. You might assume that this is another Simone-type situation, and the movie features some kind of sci-fi techie plot. But no, it's a Matthew Vaughn crime movie about a drug deal gone wrong. Not one to be left out, the Fast and Furious franchise makes a play for this with Fast and Furious, Spy Racers, Rise of Shifter, which, if the mess of words in the rest of the title are anything to go by, one of the producer's children was playing around with some fridge magnets and accidentally made a word, and the producer just rolled with it. I later found out that this is a tie-in game to Fast and Furious Spy Racers, a kids' cartoon spin-off to the main movie series, and at this point the overbearing commercialism of it all crushed me into a tiny hairball of a man. I don't want to give off the wrong impression here, like I disapprove of replacing letters with numbers or something. No, this stupid shit gives me energy. They're the hot garbage fires that fuel me each and every morning. Doing something like this requires either an extreme level of self-consciousness or a complete lack of it, and I find both states of mind equally fascinating. Saying all of this, a more creative variant has emerged that is actually clever, that being Resident Evil's most recent games. For Resident Evil 7, they were able to spell out the Roman numerals for 7 in the evil part of the game, which is just... Can you imagine how moist the graphic designer got when they did that? Then when it came to the sequel, they, of course, had to do the same thing, but the Roman numerals for 8 don't fit anywhere in the title, so they had to subtitle it something really specific, thus Resident Evil Village. They only got a semi from that one. The real question is, what are they going to do with Resident Evil 9? Crucifix? Phoenix? Suffix? That would be funny. Personally, I have 3 pitches I'd like to make. Number 1, Resident Evil Pixel, a Kojima-esque headfuck where Ethan or Rose or whoever realizes they're a video game protagonist and that's the real horror. Number 2, Resident Evil Dominatrix, where Lady Domitresque is back and more fanservice-y than ever before, if that's even possible. And finally, number 3, Resident Evil Remix Ignition, where you're hunted by R. Kelly through his mansion, and if he catches you, he pees on you. I pray that it's Resident Evil 6, but it's the 9th game, just to confuse people. So seeing how Resident Evil can still do it right in these trying times, I just lament the franchises that missed out on the opportunity to carry the flag. Like the Scream franchise. They went all in for Scriform, but where was the same passion to make Scrithrium? Did the absolute savant who suggested it not work on the crew at the time? And did they not come back for the sequel to deliver us 5 Cream? The minds behind the Fast saga had a perfect record up until now, taking every opportunity they could to put some numbers in a title, but they really dropped the ball with the 8th film, The Fate of the Furious. It's obvious they were deliberately going for the homophone, but they lacked the courage to actually write it as Fate of the Furious. They're the equivalent of men who say, I'm not a feminist, but I support equal rights. Transformers is a word that's a goldmine for this kind of thing, and arguably the biggest missed opportunity of replacing letters with numbers in history. There's not much you can do with Revenge of the Fallen unless you change the title to like Transformers, Too Racist, Too Sexist. But the rest? Transformers, Dark of the Moon? Transformers, Age of Extinction? You see what I did there? Transformers, The Last Night? Yeah? I thought for sure this is the kind of dumb shit that Michael Bay would love to do, but apparently not. He showed restraint for a single aspect of movie production, and I hate it. And that, unfortunately, is pretty much that. This trend started up in the late 90s, an outward demonstration of just how fucking extreme we could be, discarding conventions of written language for the sake of being radical. Then it proliferated in the 2000s, those fleeting days when technology was something exciting, in a wow, I can share this photo with my friends online, how cool kind of way. Not exciting in a, ooh, I can't wait to see the Black Mirror episode about this app kind of way. Those days have passed, and now replacing letters with numbers only exists as a tragic mistake, destined for ridicule, or an ironic throwback to the halcyon days of yore.
Except, in our time of greatest need, a savior has emerged to carry the torch into the future. A shining prodigy who will lead us into a new era. In theaters now is Mithrigan, and it's surprisingly a good addition to the killer doll genre. And thank God, because we have way too many bad ones. This isn't even a bit. Mithrigan is pretty darn good, and it's set to become an extremely successful movie / TikTok fuel machine if everyone's done doing the Wednesday dance now. But extremely successful isn't enough. It is absolutely vital that this film perform well at the box office, so that we can prove to the cowards of Hollywood and the games industry that this is how titles should continue to be written. So I better see you all out there, and together we will make a change. Bye!
No, this one mostly belongs to games like Drive-3r and For-3r. In for a penny, in for a pound, and called it Thuxtreme on the PS1. The Scream films decided to give it a go with Scriforum. And in a similar vein, The 3 Plan isn't the third in... Take 13 Ghosts. No, that's wrong, isn't it? Take 13 Ghosts. Some don't even make sense, like Sesevenin. Lucky number Sesevenin. Lucky number Sesevenin. But you've also got things like the movie... Oh god, no. But you've also got things like the movie Sawon Zerone. Sawon Zerone. But you've also got things like the movie Sawon Mazonu. A Drawumphed is a survival exploration. But movies still do this, featuring the absolute worst example of all in La Forêt Kekith. What would I say for that one? Shawumphthr. And did they not come back for the sequel to deliver us Fuff Cream?